Okay, it's now 6:06. We'll begin the meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. We'll just do a few clerical things, and we'll get on to the business at hand, which is acceptance of the previous meeting. The meeting, I believe, is it for the 23rd, January 23rd? Is that the meeting for that you're referring to, Amy?
Actually,
previous
maybe Ryan will know, because he's the one who worked on the minutes.
Is this the previous meeting, is this the previous meeting that we're approving?
For everybody, I just finished them today, so I'm not sure if that's tonight's meeting, I think.
Oh, you didn't print them?
No, I mean,
Oh,
There should be,
I think we had one meeting since then.
yeah, the 23rd, Ryan. Okay, so this is the meeting of the 23rd is what we're approving?
yes, yeah, that's what
Okay. Well, the first order of business would be the acceptance of the previous minutes of the meeting of January 23rd. What is your pleasure?
I don't think anyone's had a chance to read them, right? Because they were just emailed.
Yeah, I just sent them out there from last Wednesday.
Anyone else has, but they did show up late afternoon. Very timely, considering that the meeting was only a few days ago.
So what do you want to do about the minutes? Like,
It is your pleasure. Has everyone read them, and any problems with the, as what we have in front of us? The meeting of the January 23rd? Accepted as read?
Motion to accept?
I haven't read them. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I haven't read them. I'm calling them up now so that I can look them over.
I can't hear.
I haven't read them, but I'm calling them up now so that I can read them.
aren't they right there?
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
Yeah. Just pass her a copy. Oh, okay. Can I have a copy too? Thank you.
thank you.
Sorry. Since we're going to have so many minutes coming up quickly, maybe it would be good to approve them sooner.
That looks fair enough to me.
A second
I
on the
will
motion?
second the previous motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, to item 2, discussion of CPA project applications.
Okay. Did everybody get, I just want to make sure everybody got this, which is like the follow-up questions for the in-person meetings. Did everyone get a copy? Because I have a bunch of extras.
The Hoyok Boys Club?
It says follow-up, FY19, I think
Right.
you're holding it.
And the first paragraph says Hoyok Boys and Girls
Yeah.
Club Park Project. Right.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay.
So
and-
this is just so that, you know, I wanted to make sure people had it, so when we meet with them today, you can be reminded of what questions I had and you had. All right, so some updates on projects. Oh, and also, we never finished discussing some of the other ones from last time. But anyway, the updates are that right now, the Glowtech Woods has a new budget, which I gave you a copy of that. So it's, as they said, that it was going to be a little bit more, so it's 170,900, but not as much maybe as they thought, because it's 1 acre less that they're buying, that they would like to be awarded to buy the property.
Amy, where does it, does that
Or
say
the
that
city.
here?
The city would be, sorry.
Does that say?
Yeah, at the bottom, it says the total.
177?
Yeah. See, it shows you the original amount.
174, and the new revised amount is 177,900?
Right.
Okay. May I borrow your pen?
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
I might have another pen that you can use, but, okay, so, then also now, we're not gonna be meeting with Marcos, of the HRA, remember, because we already met with him, but I did ask him a question, because, I know we were, all concerned about how long this money would be encumbered, for these developer incentives, so I asked him if 4 months would be sufficient as a deadline from the time they got the award to the time of the signed contract with each of the developers, because I'm thinking about how, we need like deadlines all along the way so that this doesn't go on endlessly. And he said that 4 months could work for the Armory, only for the Armory, because that's the one that has an interested developer, Mike Moriarty. So he thinks that that's possible, but no for the train station or 123 Pine Street. They say they would need at least 1 year for, from the time of the award to the signed contract. And then I forget what the next set of deadlines are, but that's all in the application. And but that's just to give you an idea of that. Okay, and then for Maple Street Downhome Properties, John Tanzi, I had sort of given him the heads up on what we would be discussing. I think he's coming today. And he told me that he's withdrawing the 346 Maple Street property that he doesn't own. So he's supposed to provide a new budget. He told me. Okay, does anyone, because I
Anybody got a
also
spare
like
pen?
to have a pen.
Yeah, I need a pen too.
Things are tough.
I might have another.
You got
Oh,
about 8 of
here,
them?
here's a pen you can borrow.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're prepared.
Okay.
Wait.
So 346 is off the table.
Right, so that's off. So he said that he sent me another budget, but he actually didn't, so maybe he'll have that today.
He's coming tonight.
Right, so,
I did talk to John Tanzi. He's the one that, that's one of the projects I'm in charge of.
yeah,
So I've been in touch with him quite a bit. So I'm sure he'll give you a heads up, but what I instructed him, or, we talked about was that the first half of this project he owns, and the second half
Right.
he was supposed to own as of
Yes.
November, and it kind of fell through. So I told him to, if I were him, that I would take that off the table and go for
Oh.
what he does own. So he was going to submit a new budget as
Right,
of 3:30.
that's what I've just said.
Is that the
Yeah.
346 you're referring to?
Yeah, I think he
that's the one he withdrew,
withdrew 346 through 350.
because he doesn't own
He
it.
doesn't own that.
346 through,
350. He does
Okay.
own 352 through 356.
so that's, is he going to revise those, did you say?
He was going to revise it and try to get it in, but it was 3:30. It was a little late when I talked to him. But he said he's going home to do that, so if he didn't get it into you, I'm sure he'll bring it with him this evening. He's meeting with us tonight.
Okay.
Okay, and we didn't get to finish really going over some of the details that, of the responses from some of the projects last time, so do you want to do that now?
Sure.
Okay, so let's see, what were we up to? I think we were up to the Victory Theater. I think that we
I think we had
finished,
started the Victory Theater.
right, and we had already done Valley Opportunity Council, I think. Okay, so Victory Theater, we had started, so I can just go through and say, but there's a lot to go through. The other thing I had here that we could talk about is what I've learned about preservation restrictions on historic resources, which I sent to you, but, you know, I kind of zeroed in on some of the main takeaways from that. So what do you think would be best right now? Because if I go through this Victory Theater thing, that will be like me just reading out 3 pages of notes. And then there's the Flats, which is
There's the what?
The Flats building.
Flats building, which is 2.5 pages.
Well, the dollar amount of the victory is rather considerable, so let's just see if we can quickly go through
Okay,
that.
let's see. So I asked, what is the exact nature of the work that the requested funds will be used for? You know, could you provide a specific budget with an itemized list of the actual construction work to be done, and to include quotes? She said that she is gathering estimates, Kathy McKean, for the construction based on 100% completion of the plan, and will furnish the committee with an updated estimate in the next week or 2. What is the actual funding gap that this request will fulfill? And by the way, I think I gave this to you last time, so I don't know if you have it with you, but anyway. Funds from the CPA will help bridge an $8 million gap between what has been raised and the projected funds needed for construction. So that's what this $100,000 per year for over 3 years would be, of a total budget of more than $46 million. What has been done so far with the funding you've received since 2009, 9 years ago? Sure.
If I'm to understand that, they're looking for $100,000 a year first to bridge an $8 million gap.
That's what she said.
So we would land up tying up $100,000, hoping that they can come up with another $7.9 million.
Well, that's a good question to jot down for when, you know, when they come.
But I just want to make sure I'm understanding it
Yeah,
correctly.
because I'm not 100% sure, so I think that if you could just jot that down for when we meet, that's,
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been concerned about, too.
Yeah.
The other,
It's just we've been listening to this for 10 years.
I mean, maybe they think they already have it, but I don't know.
but they also, you know, as I have understood our process, we need to have very specific ideas of where our funding is going. And this sort of general, well, it's going to bridge some of the gap, I think we need more specificity from them. And, you know, we can ask them about that when they come in, too.
Yeah, more specificity, okay.
As an aside, a question or an observation, the owning and operating cost of the, for example, if they were to complete it tomorrow, do they have enough funds, owning and operating funds, to go forward till they're self-sustaining? Do they have any projected incomes? How are we to know if we and the city council decide to give them $100,000 for 3 years? For each year, and the second year of operation, they go defunct. Do they have a separate operating budget that they can, I mean, I'm not asking you that.
Yeah,
I'm throwing this out for consideration, that if we complete it tomorrow, do they have enough funds and acts and groups and activities to generate enough money to sustain itself for the foreseeable future? Just an open question that...
This also makes me think that you could decide only to give for the first year and, you know, review again to see how far they've come before approving the second year. I don't see why you would have to approve all 3 years up front, you know, especially with all the unknowns.
I'm not so sure we can afford, I don't know.
Yeah, or even, you have to even think about even the 100,000.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so what has been done so far with the funding you've received since 2009, 9 years ago? Okay, and I think Elaine mentioned this, the roof on the front office building has been replaced, roofing repairs to the rest of the roof, architectural plans are moving to construction documents. I think, Mimi, you had some of those examples.
Yeah, and this list is all very well, but what I was hoping to get from them, which we still don't have, is an actual accounting of the funds they've received versus the funds they've paid out for this. Because, I obviously am only on the periphery of this, but we've seen them hold fundraising event after fundraising event. And I think just judging from the feedback we got in our original public hearing about the entire CPA, it would be reassuring to the public to have those numbers and know that, in fact, they're using the funds that they do raise efficiently, which, this list doesn't tell us about. It doesn't tell us how much was raised, and it doesn't tell us what percentage has actually been spent on maintaining or improving the building.
It's based on a hope. The $100,000 a year for 3 years is based on a hope that they raise money. So if they don't,
The interesting thing is she also had said
so how
that,
can you be, incorrectly,
Yeah.
we should know specifically forgive me for interrupting.
that's okay.
We should know, what are you gonna do with the $100,000 for 1 year,
Yeah.
2 years, and 3 years? If they don't, if they don't know, that tells me it's kind of a weak,
Yeah, no, I think we need to know a lot about this. And
I agree.
EAC meeting? You can come in if you
Come on
want, it's
in.
an open meeting.
this is the meeting.
Hi. We're just meeting a little earlier, yeah.
No problem.
Go ahead.
Let's see, let's see, state and federal historic tax credits have been applied for and certification of plans have been accepted. A competitive analysis was completed, a strategic business plan was developed, and initial projects outlined in the plan are underway. Consultants have been hired to assist in the development and realization of this project. A full list of current consultants are attached. Yeah, so she would sound. So you're saying, Mimi, that you'd like to know, like, how much has actually been spent? And-
Yeah, I think I had asked about their financials, and I must not have been specific enough when I asked that question,
Yeah.
because, the 1 year, the 1918 or 2018, doesn't really show us the activity over time, which is what I was looking for.
Okay,
And, it's not that I'm looking to find anything bad in there. I just think the public needs to know that the money is being spent efficiently before we can ask them to spend any
Right.
more on it.
yeah, and that was one thing I wanted to remind everyone of, is that when I spoke to Kathy McKean, she said that she was asking for these funds in a way to, it seemed like it was partly, she was saying, because it would show that the CPA is supporting the Victory Theater, and that would be helpful to the Victory Theater's success. So in a way, it's also symbolic, I got the sense she
Yeah.
was saying, not just the, so.
So if everything else looks good, one possible way out of the dilemma is just to cut back on the amount of money
Right.
that we are talking about here.
Yeah.
But still, this is basic information.
It's a lot, yeah, okay. I guess from their point of view, they think that's a small amount, but from this
Yeah.
point of view, it's
Yeah,
quite a lot.
it's a lot of
yeah.
our money.
Yeah. Okay, so number 4, can you demonstrate any other projects, MIFA has completed of a similar type? Of course, none. Nothing's really been this huge. She said, have you had an independent inspection done on the theater that you can submit to us? And she said, not sure what kind of inspection is asked for here. We have had many independent engineers and other building professionals conclude that the building is sound. And the application itself just to remind everyone, it did include a detailed description of a rehabilitation preservation work plan that was, and I think it was similar to what was submitted to the city if it wasn't the same document, and it showed the existing conditions and kind of a grid.
Yeah, that
talked
grid
about this
did address some of my questions about it. And as best I can tell, they seem to have hired really good people. On the other hand, what the consultants say and some of the representations we're getting from them don't really match up, as I mentioned last time. That business of they're representing that the murals will be restored, and the information in the grid saying that the murals are not restorable. That's a contradiction right there. And beyond that, if their tax credits actually depend on this stuff being restorable, we need some reconciliation between what they're telling us on their account and what seems to be buried in that inspection report. Because
Yeah.
if their tax credits don't work, the whole thing blows up.
Right, and that's the very next point, which we did discuss last time, so I don't really have to go over that again, since you just covered it. And so next, will the Victory Theater rehabilitation comply fully with the MAAB requirements, for public accessibility? The application mentions interpretation. If not, have they applied for a variance from that board, and if so, what does that entail? And she said the designs are still in process. Some waivers may be necessary based on the age of the building. So, that's something also to think about, because the, CPC could decide that that's really important to the CPC, accessibility, but also could think, well, what's really reasonable to expect for different projects. Next, will expansion to accommodate modern productions or to rebuild irreparable portions of the theater still be historic in nature and in keeping with the U.S. Secretary of the Interior standards? She said all of the work will meet U.S. Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation as required for eligibility for tax credit financing. And she included an explanation of the historic tax credits, and it is required. Did MIFA succeed in finishing the plans and finding financing within 2 years by 2011, which they were supposed to do, in the sale of the theater from the city to MIFA? Basically, the answer is no. She said, but the reverter clause on the deed was extended twice and is no longer in effect, and MIFA continues to finalize plans and seek financing. So they got an extension twice. State Representative Vega said in a letter attachment that MIFA is working to meet LEED standards. Everybody know about LEED? Yeah. Is this true? She said yes, MIFA will try to be as green as possible and is working with Holyoke Gas and Electric on systems and usage. When will the 1,600 seats be removed, renovated, reinstalled by inmates, prison inmates, this was part of the plan, in the vocational program? Construction schedules, she said, are still being developed, but the seats will be removed as soon as possible to allow ample time for refurbishment, for reinstallation prior to the theater opening. Please provide an audit or financial report. All of MIFA's financials are online at the Office of the Attorney General, and she gave me a link to that.
Okay, that's good.
And if anybody wants it, I can give it to you, the website link. And she did attach the most recent financials, but I don't really know how to, what to look at with these financials, so that's something to think about. Okay, and then there were more questions for them that I think Mimi came up with. What funding for the project actually exists right now? Or maybe this was before that. Yeah, I think it was. She said, since July 1st, 2008, MIFA has raised and spent $2,114,700, raised $27,430,400 in pledges of state and federal tax credits, and from individuals for a total of $29,545,160 towards a goal of $36 million for construction. So I guess that's telling us that most of it's sort of pledged rather than raised. Some of your financing is through historic tax credits. Do any of those tax credits depend for validity on a commitment that the interior of the theater will be restored to look as it did in the past? If your financing is unaffected by the discovery that the interior fixtures, wood paneling, et cetera, have been destroyed by mold, because this existing condition report shows you that so much has been destroyed by mold, can we see a legal opinion confirming that this is so? I think, Mimi, you asked that. She said, yes, all of the work will meet the U.S. Secretary of the Interior standards for tax financing. Then she just sort of cut and pasted the website for those things to explain what's required. However, it doesn't confirm that MIFA will be able to meet the qualifying goals with all the obstacles they're facing, with all the destruction. So the question I think we should ask is, can she submit some document to prove that the work is even possible? You know, I'm not sure if they can do that, but that's a concern that I have.
Right.
Yeah.
So, up in Deerfield and in conjunction with UMass and their historic preservation and what Deerfield does, they have these labs up there. They're actually able to take wallpaper from the 1700s, generate the exact same paper, the exact same pigments of ink, the exact same patterns, and make that wallpaper just like it was made in the 1700s. So as far as the historic restoration at the Victory Theater, anything can be historically repaired and put back together if you've got enough money to spend. That's why we're seeing such high prices, like mural restorations, stuff like that. I think one of the examples over there is some of the wallpaper is actually silk from the Skinner silk mills. So talk about, you know, a historic renovation problem. You've got to, but that's why we're seeing such a high price tag, is meeting these Secretary of the Interior standards and stuff. So a lot of these questions, the answer is yes, 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 yes. Anything can be done if you've got enough money to throw at it. So
One of the things I read today, though, was that for things to meet the, like there's these 10 standards for the Secretary, the U.S. Secretary of the Interior, and they all involve repair more than replication, which sort of surprised me. That jumped out at me because, of course, the lanterns would be replicated rather than repaired, and like what you're just saying. So that's what I just read from the state CPA coalition.
Yeah, I think we need to check into this. And
Yeah.
of course, we need to know what they actually propose to do, because again, their own submission says, you know, some of this stuff cannot be done and they don't propose to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe, to your knowledge, isn't these type of questions, excuse me for interrupting, oughtn't these type of questions be answered, the Historical Commission, should be asking the Victory Theater these questions, as opposed to us, for example?
Well,
I'm just,
yeah.
your opinion.
Yeah, no,
Because we're getting into an area that, I don't know, that if we all want to go into that much minutia of detail, or isn't this something that I'm just
Maybe
proposing,
you're
throwing
right.
this out.
Yeah.
Oughtn't the Historical Commission to say, hey, it's got silk wallpaper, are you guys gonna, they're the historical people. I'm just wondering if we're getting into an area too much that,
yeah. Well,
that
I'll tell you,
minutia of detail.
I would love to not have to do this research, no question about it. My concern is simply that this seems to me to be kind of a tricky legal question. You know, our rules allow us to fund some things but not others. And, you know, the other thing is simply is this a viable project or not? And if it's a viable project, given their financing, it has to conform with these tax rules. Mm-hmm. And the tax rules will be dependent on these historical, or the interpretation of this, the requirements of the office of the state that looks at this stuff. So I think it's a technical question, at least as much as it's a question about, architectural history and the technicalities of history. It's about what counts under these regs and what doesn't.
When you said the state, you meant the Secretary of the Interior? Okay.
Yeah.
Amy, do we have much more to go for the Victory?
For this, there's about a page more.
Any substantial,
they're not on the agenda tonight anyways, right?
No, but
Oh.
we're not really gonna get much of a chance. I'm not sure which day if they're coming on Friday or if they're coming on Wednesday. If they're coming on Wednesday, we could meet again at 6 earlier, like we did today.
I can check that,
Next week,
but
I saw.
I think it's next week. I think it's
Oh,
Wednesday.
okay, so maybe we can continue this
yeah, we'll
then.
continue that, because we'll be
Well,
here.
we
We could
still-
spend a week on that.
I know. Should I go on to the next one then?
Well,
or-
what's the next, how about, if there's no objection by,
Victory
You
Theater's
folk-
on the 6th, next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right, so we could go on to the Flats Community Building, which we haven't discussed.
well, but the folks that are here this evening, just for the sake of everybody wants to leave as soon as possible, I'm sure. Would the committee have any objection if we went to item 3? If there's someone here, if Mike McManus is here to discuss the City Hall windows restoration, and Olivia for the exterior lanterns, and the C and D. What is,
Olivia's here now.
Is Mike McManus coming too? Hi, Olivia. I think he said he was coming, and he's not here yet, so.
okay. Well, is the pleasure of the board, well, it's,
Or we could have her start with the City Hall Annex lanterns.
yeah, why don't,
Yeah.
if the board has no objection,
No, I'm perfectly happy to move along.
would you mind if you had a few words regarding the city, the exterior, the 2 exterior lanterns that we're talking about?
Is Ryan still here, and is that the projector, right? Where's the projector in the, oh, I see.
That is the projector.
I don't know, but he hasn't set it up or anything, so I'm not sure if it.
Well, that's okay. We have good amount.
That's fine,
All right.
thanks.
Folks, I'll leave it with you.
We've got to get Olivia either on a microphone or.
Well,
Olivia, pull up a chair.
Okay.
Grab a pocketbook.
Hello, everybody. It stopped snowing, it's just blowing
Oh, that's
for temporarily.
windy, right?
Here, pull up a chair.
Oh, well, it started up.
Oh, and probably you should introduce yourself for the record.
For the record, who are you?
Olivia Malzell. Where do you live? 25 Briarwood Drive,
Are you happy?
Holyoke, Mass. Off and on.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm going to speak to you tonight about the lanterns. I don't have the narrative. I think you all have the narrative. We're going back 4 years now. This has been in the process. And it all started with this cockamamie light right over there that on the annex that it had a host of families of birds in there, and the glass was and the doors were hanging around all over. And I said, this was when Bill Fuqua was still chief. And I said, and of course we had Dean Tech was here, and we had the metal shops were all active. So I said, I floated this idea out, if we could take that down and have the kids in the metal shop replicate the lanterns, we could put them back up, and they would be matching the 2 other ones that are on the other side of the building. So, long story short, the kids did deconstruct the lantern, but in the meantime, the shop closed, and they only got so far with the lantern. So, and Mr. Peterson, the vice principal who was there at the time, said he didn't know really anything about the lantern. So I said, if you don't mind, I'm going to come and get it and see if what the next step is. So in the process, I asked around for local blacksmiths, and Camille's name came up, and Camille Peters, he's at Diesel Works in Oregon, and gave him the story, brought the project to the Holyoke Preservation Trust, and to by this time Mike McManus was on board.
Mike's here now, too.
Hi, Mike. So it turns out that the Preservation Trust fronted $500 for Camille to start the project. We had donation from, or money from the DPW for the glass panels that go around both lanterns. It's a cost of $200 frosted glass from Lacoste down on Main Street. And also Camille was going to have the lanterns powder coated, so they would be in keeping with the lanterns, the authentic look of the lanterns. So all this was an effort to make it replicate that original lantern as close as possible. And so we have another $500 left which I requested the $500 amount for Camille to finish the lanterns. I think on the last page, he has replicated. He works with Lighthouse Kids,
Right.
so this isn't his top priority, but here's the lanterns broken down, 2 sets of lanterns, and the scroll work. He's working on the scroll work, and kids are helping him. So I thought it would be, no good deed goes unpunished, you know? So once you get into a lantern, it's all these intricate little things. So this is what the original lantern case looked like. One question was, why couldn't we use this one because it was an original? We could, they're rusted and the plates are rusted through, so too bad. So, but they're being replicated in this manner. And then, so the bottoms and tops have to go on, and then they have to be welded into place. And so they're in his workshop now.
Olivia, would the $500 cover everything in terms of constructing both lanterns? Would that
We
do it?
think
from us?
so, yes,
Okay.
yes,
And,
yes. And
any
if
idea
there's
how
a
long?
difference, we can make up the difference in funding from other sources.
Okay. Any schedule of events? For example, if we, under the presumption that it's awarded, would it be 6 months to put them all together and paint them and put them up, do you think?
I think it would be sooner than that,
Okay.
because
How about lighting them?
they're in process now.
How about lighting?
Lighting, that was never, we did never discuss that in the mix, because apparently they were still, one of them was still active, but nobody knows where the switch is. I mean,
I think that I heard from Mike
where's
about
the switch?
the lighting. Right? You said,
Mike, do you have any idea?
I thought you said that they would be lit through somebody the city hires.
Mike, do you know if is the existing wiring is still in there? Is it still?
We- Everybody, we need to have them on the microphone.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
You can just press the button.
There's a mic back here also, right? Is that active?
That's my,
Mike, just identify yourself.
It's Mike McManus with the Department of Public Works. And there is still wiring there, and it was live when the lanterns were removed. I don't know the quality of the service, so the service might need to be upgraded. And if it does need to be upgraded, that'd be something that DPW would undertake.
It would be very minor. If you got the existing wiring there, you just pull another set of wires up, easy peasy.
I hope so,
Yeah, it generally is.
yeah.
And there's circuit traces, you can trace out where the switch is very easily. I'm sure the G&E or the DPW must have circuit tracers to find out where the breaker is or where the switch is.
Right,
That's easy. You can do that. It's easy peasy.
okay.
We're talking about a couple of 100-watt light bulbs. The load is not going to be much. So to light them, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Any other questions, anybody?
Well, I've got nothing, but since we do have members of the public who might or might not be other applicants, I would ask whether anybody who happens to be here has any questions they want to ask about this project. I know that this is not technically a public hearing, but we did talk about inviting public.
Anybody have any questions or any for Olivia or Mike regarding the two lanterns outside on the annex building? Thank you. On the annex building, any thoughts, opinions, comments?
Okay, thank you
Well,
for indulging me.
One question I have is, so does it seem that Camille Peters is able to do this? Because you mentioned at one point that he was having difficulty.
It took him some time to get going on it,
Mm-hmm.
yes. But he's, VTech is following him and Mike is following him, so I think there's a little impetus to get it going and finished. Get it-
VTech?
VTech Kluta.
Oh,
was-
okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I should mention that Westside Finishing said they would do the powder coating free of charge. So,
Nice,
nice, yeah.
very good.
Do you have any concern, though, that the same thing might happen again with the lanterns? Because they, the way they got destroyed before, just wondering, like, if,
I don't, they've been up, they've been up on 1948.
oh,
The
Okay.
two other original lamps. They
mhm.
just have to be maintained, keep the bird nests out.
Okay,
They were broken, so the
Broken,
birds could
yes,
get in.
yes,
Yeah,
But if
yeah.
it fits, the birds
okay.
won't.
Okay, any other questions? From the committee? Okay,
Okay, all right.
thank you for your time
Thank
and
you.
your efforts. Keep up the good
Oh,
work.
and now
Would you
you're,
like to keep this, or do you have?
Yeah, I would keep it.
you can,
Oh,
one of you,
Amy.
because I have a lot of information already from you,
Okay.
so.
Okay. All right, Olivia, thank you. All
Um,
set.
Should we move on to the stained glass one?
Yeah, if Mike's here, he was the first one.
And-
Yeah, Olivia, thank you.
Oh, thanks. Should I?
Mike, if you could address us regarding the stained glass restoration for the city hall, that would be terrific.
I did make a presentation, is it up and running, or
So Ryan's
Shall I
Oh, that's
ask
okay.
for,
Just-
I can look,
spent a long time thinking about?
Well, that's what counts.
big time.
Oh,
Okay,
I,
so here,
no, I don't think I
I
have.
don't think you've seen that.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I mean, okay, I'll leave it with Amy, so she can show it, she can have this in our
Yes.
archives, so we can look at it as time allows. Mike, go ahead, a brief
Okay, so-
explanation.
Upstairs in the ballroom, there's 13 windows, stained glass windows. They were designed and manufactured by Samuel West, of the Ecclesiastical Stained Glass Works out of Boston in 1876, when the City Hall was built. They're, in the main auditorium, there's 10 large windows. 6 they're figural, representing various aspects of Holyoke's economy of the period, and then the other 4 are decorative. And then in the front of the auditorium, there's 2 large windows with 2 figures representing the United States. And then there's 2 small column lunettes above the large window in the stairwells on the backside.
Mike, there's a total of 13,
Total of 13.
and how many have been done so far?
2.
2 have done.
Two have
So
been done.
we have 11 more, so the
Yeah.
money you're requesting is for the additional 11 more to completely restore them and install them?
No.
No, okay, go ahead.
So here's a figure. It looks better on the screen, but this is the auditorium. The 2 that were redone are windows 8 and 10. And then at that time, windows 9, 11, and 12 were taken out and boxed up and put in storage. And there's glass there now. So windows 1 through 5, which are on the parking lot side of City Hall, those are still in place. There's the two other figures and the lunettes are still also in place.
So, Mike, the figure you're referring to, I don't have in front of me, windows 9, 11, and 12 are outside, they're in containers?
Correct.
And the money you're requesting would take care of restoring and replacing those three?
Correct.
Okay,
Provided we also get a match. So the intent is to use the CPA money as seed money for a match from the Mass Historic Commission.
mhm,
And they require a 50% match.
okay. Yeah, I know you can't predict the future. Does this type of activity look promising as we speak, to your knowledge?
They did provide a grant when the first 2 windows were redone back in 2011?
Mhm,
Yes.
No, 15, 2015.
okay,
So back then, Mass Historic provided a $65,000 grant. The library, excuse me, the library provided a $50,000 contribution, and then the city kicked in $21,000.
can that be duplicated, those donations, replicated, I should say?
The library, I don't think so.
Okay, no,
at
that's
this
okay.
time. So our goal right now is to take the 75 from CPA,
Uh-huh,
get another 75 from Mass Historic.
uh-huh,
That would give us a total of 150,
uh-huh.
and that would be used to refurbish windows
9, 11, and 12. Okay, and you know how long that would take from start to finish? If I gave you the check this evening,
Yeah,
so to speak, just
so-
ballpark.
ballpark. We figured we'd have to go out to bid
Yeah,
for this.
Okay,
So there would be time with bidding and procurement, but then several months for construction. But we could probably have the construction wrapped up May, June, July of next year
and installed,
and installed.
So would it be about a year from start to finish?
I have a question though, because I thought that Serpentino was already the contractor.
They were the contractor in 2015.
Oh, but they're not going to,
No, since they're the contractor, the city would have to go out to bid, and it would be publicly bid.
oh, so you have to do it that way?
You do,
As a
Okay.
result of the amount of money?
correct.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But Julie Sloan, she would act as the project supervisor. She has the credentials with the historic preservation and whatnot. We don't have to go out to bid for her services. We could contract directly.
That's a specialty. Okay, no, that's fine. So do you have money to pay her? To
It
your-
would be part of this.
Oh, okay. And she's necessary person to be with, to make
She
the
is.
project go
Right.
go swiftly.
And also for the Mass Historic Commission, they have certain requirements, and they need
Oh, her
certain
signature on
people
it.
with credentials.
Yeah, oh, I understand. Okay.
And just
Any
looking
questions from the
forward,
committee?
How, or what kind of shape are the other windows in? Is this something like we hope to do 2 or 3 every year until they're all finished?
Yeah.
And the others are in no imminent danger of collapsing, I take it?
I mean, the first 2 windows that were done, at 8 and 10, they had major flaws.
Yeah.
Large sections that were missing. The windows that have been taken out and stored, there was concerns about the lead
Yeah,
and pieces of glass falling out. The windows that are there now, if you look up, you can see a little bit of warping in the window. There's also been pieces of the stained glass that have been replaced. It doesn't seem like they're in danger of out of place right now, but it is something that we do want to do
yeah,
And-
stay
and-
ahead of.
by picking away a little bit at a time.
Mike, would 9, 11, and 12, the windows 9, 11, and 12, are they in most need of help as opposed to the rest of them?
Well, they're secure right now. They're in boxes.
Oh,
So,
right,
Yeah.
right, right. Thank you.
and that's why it would be easy to kind of just ship them out.
Get them out. Yeah,
And
Okay.
have them done.
okay.
Um,
Any further?
We did try to get funding through through the city last year. There was a bond request for $350,000. And the thought was if we got that bond, we could go to Mass Historic and then just do everything all at once. But at that time, the bond request was denied.
Okay.
And so we're here now.
Okay.
Where did you apply for the bond?
City funds.
Amy, you had a question?
Oh, no, it's just
That's me.
the
I'm
thought
sorry.
behind this obviously is if there is imminent danger that requires the others to be taken out and boxed for security. I assume that we would hear about that because that would be something I would think that we would want to consider if there weren't money available to do it elsewhere.
Good idea.
Right. And if, let's say we were able to cobble together $150,000 for the construction, we got to bid, and if the bids came in at $120,000, then we would look to use that other money to safeguard the remaining windows, maybe
Yeah.
box
Good
them
idea.
up and get them ready
Good
for
idea.
next time.
Amy?
Oh, okay, so, there was an MHC project report that was, it wasn't actually signed, and, that was for work done on the first two windows. So it's just, was that work was completed, though?
Yeah, that work was done back in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, it was submitted to the state in
Okay.
order to get the grant.
Okay.
That is completed.
Okay, and also, one area that I think the CPC will be exploring is whether or not to place some type of preservation restriction. So this would be in addition to the Secretary of the Interior Standards, just to protect the,
I mean,
investment.
that's not us. I mean,
I think it's already done, kind of, right?
go ahead.
Actually,
Oh.
the city hall already has preservation restrictions.
Okay.
on it, So it's already done.
So it's a perpetual restriction.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah.
good to know. All right,
Yeah. Perpetuity.
okay, good.
Okay.
So that
other-
work can't be changed, okay.
Any other questions? Everybody all set? Anybody have any other questions regarding the stained glass? Okay. Okay, very good. Okay, well, thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a question.
We don't have any money. No,
No
just
money.
Here,
Go
can you speak to me?
Smith's Ferry has, we're supposed to come here a Friday for Smith's Ferry?
Oh, I thought you were talking about that. Oh, you're right, that's not today. I don't remember if it's Friday, but it's on the Google Drive.
I'm saying, we're the only one, Smith's Ferry?
No, there's somebody else who signed up. There's someone else who's also signed up for the day.
So we're flexible. If Friday doesn't work for you, I mean,
Uh-huh,
we
okay.
could go into the following week. You could, if we're not,
Uh-huh.
Smith's Ferry isn't the only one on the agenda?
Right, there's somebody else, there's,
Somebody
yeah.
else. Okay, okay,
Okay, thanks.
okay.
There's only one other.
Okay. Are you guys all set?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, do you have a business card with you? No, it's okay, okay. Oh, well, thank you. If we're all here.
Okay.
So maybe we should call up Valley Opportunity Council next?
Yeah, we'll wait till our chairman
Okay.
takes over.
Yes.
Elaine, we're all, well, okay, if Elaine has, Madam Chairman, if you have no objection, we were going to go to C, which is the Valley Opportunity Council, Steve Huntley, regarding Chestnut Street, Chestnut and Franklin properties. And this is the Steve Huntley.
Evening,
Who's Steve?
I'm Steve.
Oh, okay, Steve.
I have with me Alex
Oh,
Jansen, who's
I think you should speak into the microphone if you,
Yeah,
yeah.
and if you guys can identify yourselves, your name and who you represent, it's part of the...
Is that one we could?
Yes.
Yeah, use that one if you want. That's easy.
Hand around, or?
Sure, wherever it's easiest for you. Okay?
I don't want to breathe on anybody.
Thank you.
So nobody's sitting there.
I had to look for the awning and the day wasn't quite long enough.
If you, did you guys, can you just introduce everybody and who you represent?
Sure, sure.
The,
So, wow, the volume's up on this. My name's Steve Huntley. I'm Executive Director of Valley Opportunity Council. Alex Jansen is Director of Operations at Valley Opportunity Council.
Jeffrey Morgan with MBL Housing and Development.
And Peter Graham with MBL Housing and Development. So we're development consultants assisting Valley Opportunity in this project.
Okay, if you could, our chairman, Elaine Pluta, if you could address her and us as to the scope and tell us a little about the project.
I'd be happy to. Is it being recorded? Is that why we need the mic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It just feels extraordinarily loud. Sorry. So we became involved in this property about 3 years ago. Long story short, it was a tax credit deal done by Nueva Esperanza, the late Carlos Vega, in the 90s. As the tax credits ended, they were looking for an organization to take it over that would come back, evaluate the property, figure out how it was going, and then manage it going forward. We stepped forward to do that, and were selected as those to receive the property. We did a full evaluation in hopes that we wouldn't have to, what they call, recapitalize the project or go in and reapply to the state and for substantial sum of money to redo the whole thing. Unfortunately, the capital assessment of the property came back with serious deficiencies. There were structural deficiencies. We've spent somewhere around $90,000 within the last couple of years shoring up some structural deficiencies that were uncovered. And it's just a tired building. So we're looking at catching it up, getting it back in track.
Oh, sorry, just which building are you talking about right now?
All of them, both
Okay,
of them.
Both, okay.
Both of them. So we're looking at new kitchens, new bathrooms, new heating system, possibly air conditioning system. When I look at, I don't know which side it is, when I look at this, the thing I see is the air conditioners in the window. So depending on how far the budget goes, we have this list of items that we want to try and tick off to improve the conditions. Our fundamental mission with our affordable housing portfolio is that if you build quality housing, you get quality tenants, and that helps folks succeed in life. All too often, the affordable housing is done, and this was the case many years ago. It's done, with subpar products. The kitchen cabinetry is not great. It wasn't built to last 20 years, yet here we are 20 years later. The drawers don't all open, they don't close. There's just subpar construction, and our model is bringing a high level for the affordable housing community, and then managing it well so we don't have to come back every 20 years and redo it. And we've had tax credit deals that were done around the time that Vosie's was done by VOC, that are still operating. We're not looking to do another recapitalization of those. So we have the track record of working and managing these properties in a way that is an asset for the community. So we're trying to get this back up to snuff, quite frankly. Yeah, I mean, you have anything to add?
Yeah, as I think there were some, the whole package. This process obviously takes a lot of money, And as I think you've seen in the budgets, that the budgets are millions of dollars, and we're here asking for 50,000 and 50,000. And what's really important as part of that state budget and where all the other money is coming from is that they see a local commitment that the community cares about what's in the community. And obviously we do, and we're the community, but they like to see it from somebody else than just the sponsor as we are. So this building is historic, and we have historic
This
tax.
building is historic?
This building is historic. This was new construction, and this was an historic building. Is an historic building, and we have historic tax credit awards as part of all of this funding as well. And that building, this one, has a serious deficiency with the envelope, with the windows and the way the EVA siding was attached 20 years ago. We've redone a small part which was really failing, and when we were doing that, there was rot on the inside, which really gave away that the outside envelope was failing. So we did a small part of the EVAs, and now really the rest of the building needs to be done as well to make sure that that it stays in good shape and will preserve the affordable housing for the future.
One thing to add, you look at this side over here, you look at the Hope 6, the Housing Authority's project from many, many years ago. There's one way down there. Those are, I was talking to Matt the other day, those are closing in on 20 years old, and they still, hard to believe, isn't it? But it's closing in on 20 years that the first ones of those were built, and they still look amazing. And that's ultimately what we want those to match, so that this hasn't worn well. And if you look close, you can see the discoloring where water's penetrated in. So it was the wrong product 30 years ago, 25 years ago when they did it. So we want to do it right now so that it'll match the neighborhood, it'll match the Hope 6, the new Hope 6. It's still new in my head. And really pull together that street.
Questions?
This is the building in Von Garcia, is it?
Yes, that's right.
It has an elevator in the back, right?
Exactly right, yes.
It has an elevator in the back.
There's an elevator there. There is it 38?
I remember her fighting for that elevator.
Yes. She was very involved. This one goes back to, they were cooking meth in one of the fourth floor units, and it was, you look in the newspaper, those of us that have been around Holyoke for 30 years can remember the history of that, the long storied history of this project. And there was a raid, and it was very close. It was a very dicey situation, as the police reports indicate. Could have kaboom many different times in many different circumstances. So, and you're exactly right. Yvonne is still the leader of the homeowners association.
Yeah, she's still there?
She's still there.
Wow.
Resident association. I'm sorry, they're not homeowners. My mistake.
Right, the residents, yeah.
This property has a very strong resident association. They meet regularly. They approve capital expenditures. They have a voice in how this project is done.
Mike?
Yeah, I think you might have partially started answering what I was going to ask. One of the reasons the Hope 6 are in such good shape isn't just the quality, but it's the people. A lot of them are owner occupied, and they've been maintaining them over the years, whereas some of the other ones aren't. They're really rental units. Would these ever become owner occupied, or they'd stay rental units the whole time?
Based on the funding, the intention would be always rental. I can tell you that I meant to look up this number and I didn't, but it's more than half of the residents that moved in when this opened up, including Yvonne, are still there. And that's unheard of, to have a
They're
low.
both affordable housing, right?
It's all affordable housing, correct?
Madam Chairman, a couple of questions. Just to refresh my memory anyway, what would be the approximate cost? Is it 50,000 for each one?
For CPA funds, yes.
CPA funds, and that's a one-shot deal?
Correct.
So, for example, for 2019 or 2020, whatever the calendar, it would be 50,000 for that one and 50,000 for that one. And upon getting to 50,000, what would click in? What would the 50,000 represent in the story of that building and in that building?
So I don't have it separated by buildings. The total project cost, including everything, every lawyer, everything, is north of 9 million. So the 100,000 investment would leverage more than 9 million of other resources. 1.7 of it is historic tax credit money that would come through. I have it here, I'm sorry. I gotta go to my cheat sheet.
And I could assist and jump in, Madam Chairman, if it
Yes.
helps. The part of, and this becomes also a thing where one of the questions that was posed had to do with if the money isn't used in a certain amount of time. And I know that, I've worked in different communities where sometimes they will make a commitment of CPA funds, but depending on how they manage their annual allocation, it might not be, this year's or next year's pot of money. And that's something that is, outside of my expertise in knowing how you can do that. But to your point, the 50,000, the real key is that without a local leverage to get all the other funds, we're kind of almost starting out without the opportunity to go. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You have a question, Mike?
Yeah, so $9 million, how many units does that provide?
36.
36. That's $250,000 per unit.
That isn't just construction.
Right.
That's everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they're fully occupied. There's relocation costs when you move folks out to their unit. There's, we pay for every attorney, and there is 4 or 5 different sources that come through. So there's 4 or 5 attorneys that come together that we're paying for. I mean, you're absolutely right. But unfortunately, it's the way that this system works.
And you understand for CPA funds that there's specific criteria that you can only use those funds for. We can't do kitchens and bathrooms.
Correct.
Right.
You know that, the one,
They're historic, yeah.
yeah.
Right.
The
This
one,
is- yep.
that one there, the other building there, the envelope, yes, we can, our funding can definitely, if there's water penetration, absolutely, we can do that. But I'm not sure what you would use
For what we've done is broken it up into 50,000 from the historic, for the historic preservation, including the brick repointing and the necessary exterior envelope work around the historic preservation of that building. And in this building, it was around the envelope issues that were mentioned earlier, the EFIS and the windows and the leaking that has kind of done some damage on it, to clearly fall within the allowable CPA funds.
Yeah, I noticed that the 2014 capital needs study that you provided in the application only pertained to the, this building, not to 337.
We could address that, yeah.
Chestnut Street.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, in terms of the water infiltration issue affecting the envelope of the building, do you have something that really can verify that?
Well, it comes out of a function of the fact that when Valley Opportunity became involved in owning it and then repairing the situation that they face. So they essentially faced a situation of a window failure that needed to be replaced, and as they dug into it, they saw that it was leaking through the EFIS and creating a much bigger problem. It is documented, in the sense, it's documented from the cost to repair it, and then the realization at the time that this is a bigger issue, so we need to button it up to protect it from the weather immediately, but we'll know that we have an issue going forward. And that's where the decision then was made to hire an architecture firm to do what we would call kind of an enhanced CNA, which would result in construction documents to actually do the entire rehab. So we did share the drawings, and we have a matrix that has notes and photos and, the issues identified. So the building has been, has over the last year been crawling with thermal envelope experts and such. And that is all available, but it is really kind of codified in the drawings, in the plans to do the work to fix it.
Okay, I'm sorry, so do you have something you can actually submit that shows that that there is a very immediate risk of damage to the building with water infiltration?
We could provide that. I mean, we have, what we don't have, the envelope engineer's report went to the architect and then was codified in the plans, and that identified that this is how we're going to do it. I mean, but we can have that pulled out separately. It might be an email, it might be,
We can take pictures of the cracking. When you get close, you can see the cracking. You
Yeah,
can
because
see
I
it.
noticed that was also listed for that building, and yet you're not asking for that kind of work for the historic building.
but it is being done. It's, we had to basically bifurcate where we're asking for eligible funds
Okay,
from the
but not through
affordable
CPA.
side. Well, even, right, the CPA funds for the historic will cover the tuck pointing and
Okay,
all.
all
And
right.
the 50,000 of that, it's over $400,000 worth of tuck pointing and facade and exterior work to get the brick building in, good shape.
When the time comes, if we did give you the funding and you do the project, you're gonna have to be very specific and keep separate our funds and show exactly that
Right.
that's what that was used for.
And
Just-
we're from,
just to be-
that's a similar situation NBL has faced in other communities where as you invoice for those funds, you have it clearly documented what you use the funds for.
Okay.
Sir, so we have two projects here. One is historic preservation, and the other one is rehabilitation.
It's actually affordable preservation, I would,
Yeah,
For that one.
no, for this
for
one.
this one too. So it's an existing affordable housing, and while I think you're right in the sense that there is a rehabilitation is absolutely an appropriate term that could be used. I know that in CPA funding, you can't, quote, use CPA funds for rehabilitation, but you can use it for preservation, which includes the structural integrity, exterior envelope work.
That's correct.
And that's
Yeah, and the
the,
thing is that it's supposed to, it's, what I've learned is it's very difficult. You have to, like with preservation, it really has to be something that falls onto that definition.
and that's why, as Jeffrey identified, it clearly is. I mean, the EFS and the exterior envelope and the windows are, documented eligible source or projects for CPA in this, for existing affordable housing.
What is the EFS? Is the-
EFS is the stucco. You could
Okay.
call it stucco. So it's instead of having clapboards siding, it's they're sometimes use foam and then a kind of.
There, you see the vinyl, and then that's that.
Right.
That's an acronym for Exterior Insulation Finish System.
Right.
Okay.
Styrofoam
Yeah.
finish, like it's like a stucco.
Right.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Would you, go ahead, Mike.
So you've got me a little bit confused here. This project here is 9 million.
No,
Combined.
The projects are combined for over 9 million, but because as CPA has affordable housing as one pot of money and then historic preservation, that building is eligible for the historic, and this building we're asking for from the affordable.
Okay. So one of the things I hear from a lot of people, the Oak Hill Homes, which is, was a part of the Hope 6 project that's separate, has been incredibly successful. Everybody, I haven't heard any negative comments about that, and the success of it has been the ownership piece. Why wouldn't these ever be available for ownership, or something like that, I can
Yeah.
see that's a magnificent brickwork, and that's real nice historical preservation work. But why not go condo with it, where they'd have the opportunity to own the property,
It's,
as opposed to maintaining it as low-income rental?
well, there's a couple of things, and I can speak to this. For one, you know, there's a lot, the state has gone through different periods of supporting affordable home ownership, and has run through some mixed success with that. With this, this is leveraging, this is a public-private partnership, which is what funds the low-income housing tax credit and the historic tax credit program. It's essentially corporate dollars that are investing in these properties, and then they kind of act as essentially the versus HUD, they're acting as the compliance professionals. And I want to make sure that it's clear that the property here is phenomenally successful as affordable housing, both families, stability, and the tenancies. It's that at the time in the 90s and a lot of situations, and they aren't alone, the people were developing things on shoestring budgets, and that then had a result in the quality of the materials that were used. So you know, the home ownership versus rental, I don't know that there's that this is the venue to have that debate.
Yeah.
But what I know clearly is the most successful public-private partnership in this country is the low-income housing tax credit, because it creates real penalties for the private investors if the property falls out of compliance, which we don't have any compliance issues, nor do we anticipate any.
Madam Chairman, from my point of view, I would like to get, if with the chair's permission and the board's permission, I'm a little gun-shy that the CPC folks at the state level that give us the money are going to take exception to this project by defining rehabilitation or preservation. I'm a little sketchy, I'm a little nervous, quite frankly, that they're going to say no.
It's not so much them, it would be the actual legislation, so we'd probably have to
Well,
talk to our
whoever
city solicitor.
Well, I don't know if we should, I think they should.
Right,
To get a definitive letter to say, yes, that activity for that building meets our criteria, so if the Hoyo Preservation Committee so chooses and gives them the money, you have our blessings. I'm just a little nervous.
The onus is really on the committee, though, in
But-
terms of.
Yeah, but I can't,
We're
can't
here to
make
help
those
you,
decisions.
But
absolutely.
we have scoring things.
Well, that's
that
why we have a city
yeah.
solicitor to help
Right.
work with us on.
And we
And
we
you
can
look-
absolutely help, to your point, sir. I mean, the Community Preservation Coalition, which you may or may not be familiar with, is
No, yes, that's what he's referring to, yeah. When
Right.
it's
Well, it's something
The
from.
CPC from the
Something
state,
from
yeah,
them,
I
we
wanted
are.
something
very
from,
familiar.
from somebody at the state level
Yeah.
to say, if we go through
Yeah.
with that project in this manner, for that amount of money, yes, as the
Right.
state of Massachusetts, here's a letter that says, we agree with everything you say.
Yeah,
I would
I've
be more
actually,
comfortable if I got that letter.
Mike, I've actually shared this application with Stuart Saganor. He asked to, see it, but he hasn't gotten back to me yet, so hopefully we'll get more feedback. from
And
him.
his capacity as whatever he does, he represents the state of Massachusetts. He is,
Well, he can help with us, but our solicitor could help too, yeah.
well, I don't see why our solicitor should do it, which I think their
That's how
solicitors.
CPA communities work. They work with the city, this is on the CPA Coalition website. You work with, the community works with the city solicitor and then goes to the coalition if you're still in trouble, really,
Right.
or confused.
And,
Well,
and
and I
Madam,
don't-
Madam Chairman, we got a sense from the questions, and that's why there are four of us here in a way, is we got the sense that, there's, our role is absolutely to help you, also help us, but also help others who are going to be pursuing these funds. And we can absolutely work together to help you get that documentation to get you comfortable.
Yeah, and it says right in the, the scoring information that if it's used to preserve the outside of the building, especially if there's water damage, that's a big plus right there.
No,
for
I-
us to
no, I'm-
be looking, for them to be looking for funding, and so, you know, they're,
Yeah, Madam Chairman,
Yeah.
and I agree, but I would feel if somebody higher up the food chain got a letter that said, yeah, we agree with you.
Right.
So I'm a little gun shy on that.
Yeah, that's why I was asking for a little more documentation that, I just want to know how you came to your conclusions about what are the most pertinent issues for these
Absolutely.
buildings. you know?
And we can definitely, we could tell from some of the questions. We can definitely, I think, attack this with, we have Davis Square Architects, who's the firm that's involved, who's had deep experience with CPA-funded deals, but also their thermal and building envelope expert, I think Arthur, I can't remember his last name, but we could get that.
So the picture Alex is holding shows the new ephes that was put in. The longer story. I'm better at long stories than short stories.
Is that the water damage you're talking about?
Yes, it's around, and like every sill has water damage, even when I go to the next pictures. And then this was the repaired ephes. See, it's actually coming down.
I see.
So what happened in a tenant
Yeah, show those.
unit, the windowsill fell out. And so the former managing company went in and said, oh, what's going on? They started investigating. They found a whole area where it had failed. So we had to replace that because we wanted it to reasonably match, even knowing that this was a temporary fix. So if that, helps you see a little bit more. But to your point, we'll talk to whoever to help. This is all new to me too. So however we can be of help is we're truly here to work together to figure out.
Right, Madam Chairman, one more question. That building, is that an historic register of places that's truly historical? Does that get a definition from the state of Massachusetts that building is historical? Or the Holyoke Historic Commission, did they say, yes, that
Yes,
building?
The
we did get a
process.
letter, yes.
Okay.
Right.
They've awarded us somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 already towards our developer.
Oh, okay.
So we have the letter, but we also have some of the real commitment.
I have some more questions. So I know that in the report for 348 Chestnut, for that building, that there was a mention of the basement fire-rated ceiling separating, and that's sort of, protecting the building from fire, getting between the basement and the upper floors. So I'm just wondering if you have those severe issues, is that something that you're addressing with other funds? So, because it seems like before CPA funds go into historic rehabilitation, we'd want to make sure that the building is not in danger of fire.
Of course.
Yeah,
We're trying to get a couple of bids to get that fixed.
getting contractors on it right now to actually make sure that whole fire-rated ceiling is in code compliant conditions, perfect conditions, so that we're using other funds for that. That'll be done within the next, hopefully, month is really.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
working on that right now.
That's good.
Yeah, that is.
kind of what the document that laid that out. I mean, of course, this is again where the Valley took ownership of this, started digging, and I mean, when the property was done some 20 years ago, of course, it was in full, fireproof and everything else. But over the years, as a plumbing leak or does something, or somebody had to bust through it and then didn't go back and repair it appropriately. In fact, depending on the age of those photos, they have maintenance and everything, and there's stuff that's constantly being done to pick away at at things. So it was a good point to bring up, and one that we don't want to have fester. Yeah.
And as you know, for the historic rehabilitation, you would have to follow the U.S. Secretary of the Interior standards for historic rehabilitation, but the committee may also come up with a preservation restriction of some kind, or an agreement for maybe up to 30 years to protect the city's investment, in that historic rehabilitation. So does that sound like something that you might be open to?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good. Can you confirm when the next funding round for the DHCD grant is? Because you said likely to be February of 2020.
That's right, and we don't have anything beyond that. So it used to be that the DHCD would have 2 funding rounds each year, with people competing to get admitted into that round, so that to do what they call the one-stop. And over the years, it ended up getting into a mode where it was just one funding round, and that round would be announced in December or in November, whereby people would put in an application in December to get invited into the round, which would typically be in February. So we believe it will be in that same process going forward, but don't have any, confirmation on that.
And we were in this last round. We were not invited in.
Yeah, you said that.
And
Right.
one of the things was that there was no local support.
support.
Right, so the local support is really key for
It
you.
is,
Okay.
Yeah.
and we did pursue other local support through the home program, but the property already has state home funds that were funneled through the city into the project back 20 years ago, and so it left it outside of the eligibility for additional home funds. And I believe, I'm not sure where CDBG funds are, how they're used in the city, but my understanding is that it's not something that typically the city of Holyoke uses in housing, but uses in other ways, whereas different communities may also use CDBG funds to support a project like this.
Well, they have a little bit here and there, and it's not their usual
Right.
funding.
No, it's never enough,
Yeah,
honestly.
no, exactly, yeah. But the home funds come in very handy for all that.
If
yeah.
you end up not receiving the DHCD funds, even after, being awarded this local fund from the CPA, would you still be able to go ahead and do the listed work with the CPA funds, or would there be some problem to achieving that?
The problem, it's kind of a tricky question, because it depends on, without it would be a situation where you would be self-funding through debt financing and whatever the property could support for debt, and then with the additional, say, the $100,000 from CPA, you wouldn't be able to do the same level of work. So it really is kind of a game changer in how we would approach what we do.
Yeah, I think what we would like to do, if we're not successful in this next DHCD round, we would like to maybe keep this on a shelf and actually then go in for the following round. We've had a project that was in 5 or 6 rounds.
In Chicopee, yes.
Chicopee, and there were other reasons why we didn't get funded in one round or the next, but we would look to be in the funding rounds really until it gets funded.
So are you looking for the full amount then for this round, if you should?
Well, so in terms of the way the rounds work, we would look for the full amount in each round. So that's why I mentioned at the beginning of my comments, depending on how you're able to carry over or, provide a commitment, but the money can be, used in your funds, and it be that you might decide, for instance, if we go in 2020, the award, should we get awarded in the first round, would come likely in July or August of 2020, and we wouldn't close on our financing until the early 2021, right? So these projects take some time, and that's if we got funded on the first round.
Yeah.
So would it be Holyoke CPA money from fiscal year 2020 or 2021? And that's where, again, I think that there's possibly with the Community Preservation Coalition some, thoughts on how groups like yours can manage the resource so that it accommodates people to have a commitment of the funds, but not be in a situation of losing it if it's not
Accessing them,
used.
Because rather than spending it for $100,000 construction, we would rather have it sit there and be part of the Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, because one of the concerns of the committee is, endlessly encumbering a certain,
Yeah.
amount of money. So one thought I had is, would you agree to a contract that would stipulate that the CPA funds would be returned if the DHCD tax credit was not received? Or in other words, that it would no longer be encumbered, that,
That's
but we
where I
wouldn't
think
be
the
holding it for you.
Right, a mechanism that has maybe been used by other communities that we could make sure that, we'd be willing to work to kind of make sure that there isn't like an encumbrance on it, and with the hope and desire that the commitment is still there and acts as a valid commitment as a local match if we have to go into the 2021 round and such.
Right, because you won't have invoices and stuff anytime soon to access the funds, that if we
Right.
put them aside, they're.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, it's not like we're gonna, if we gave you the money, you would, the funding, you would start invoicing us because you're not gonna start the
Right.
project.
So are you saying that you would agree to a contract that would stipulate that you would
I'm
give
not.
up the
I mean,
award if you didn't get the DHCD funding?
Well, they probably would wanna give up the award, but would look for us to commit to future when they did get the money for
Could we
it.
roll
So in other
over
words,
the award?
that money would be encumbered for an unknown number of years.
Well, if we want to
Could we
do
roll
that,
it
or we
over?
could wait and just say, we're committing it to you, but we're not going to give you the money this year because you don't need it. We could, we could.
Yeah, but that means you're encumbering it.
So encumbering
Well,
though,
yes and no.
yeah,
We
you-
wouldn't be taking it from this, but the money we have now, we might take
Right.
it from a future money
correct,
that we have.
Madam,
Right, but you
exactly.
just have to hope that you have it, is what I'm saying, because there'll be other projects coming in the future.
We have
and
to keep that
so
in
that's
mind.
why
If we make a commitment, we'd have to
I
put
think
that
it
there.
either has to be a commitment or not, so.
Yes,
Wow.
yes, it is. Folks, you paid your taxes on both these locations?
Yes.
Okay.
And every other but one, and it was a weird fluke. I mean, we pay, we pay north of 90,000 a year in taxes organizationally.
But these two are paid for.
Those two are paid for. There was one property that for somehow the tax bill didn't go through, so we paid it online. So we're clear on that. That was about 3,000.
The one that was in question.
Yeah.
Oh, the 181?
181 Elm Street.
Yeah, we paid it with a credit card actually,
Oh.
like yesterday.
Yesterday
There was
I paid it
check
with a
that
credit card.
Somehow.
Oh,
we
you paid
voided
it yesterday?
Yeah,
Okay.
there was, I don't know, there are 8 or 9 checks that go in, and 7 out of 8 cleared. There was just
Oh.
this one, 181
Huh.
Elm Street, that didn't
Okay.
clear. It's the strangest thing.
Since we were
Okay.
here tonight,
We wanted to
We made
have a
sure it was
receipt
paid on
available
the
for you to
card.
show
Card
that
that-
that's,
Never have debt.
So just one last question that I have anyways, that, and maybe you've already said this, and I apologize if you have, but can you specify what funds have actually been secured, and how much you'll be requesting from DHCD?
so we have secured somewhere between, and I didn't get the exact number, I apologize, but it's between 300,000 and 400,000 of the historic money.
Right. 300,000 in state historic money has been secured. And then the DHCD, we are on track to request $1 million in what is soft grant money from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. But DHCD is also the source for the tax credit to win the state and federal low-income housing tax credits, even though it's a public leveraged money, a private leveraged money, the actual ability to get it is controlled by DHCD. So the total there would be 8,807,000, is what is in the current
It all comes from that
Target.
fund.
Right.
Or the funder, right, DHCD, all that comes together.
DHCD, right, through that one-stop application, and there may be, if we find that there is a different source from DHCD that we'll apply for, like housing stabilization funds or something like that, some of that comes with feedback from DHCD to which pot of money they would prefer us to, go after. But north of 8.8 million in leveraged funds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Hopefully.
Just windy now.
Oh, it's windy, yeah,
Did the snow stick?
with the drifts.
It looked terrible earlier. It was just torrential.
Okay, so you did the first project. They had 3 things they came in for, the stained glass lanterns and,
Yes, and now we're up
Also-
to
yeah,
Maple Street.
Our final one is
Come on
D.
over.
There he is.
Come on in, John. Yeah.
John.
good night.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
I've talked to Doug quite a bit because I'm in charge of this project.
Sending around a revised budget.
Okay, great.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. That's for the city hall.
Okay,
If you, for your files.
sure.
Amy, is it safe to assume that the committee doesn't know about my answer to your question?
Oh, I did tell them about 346, that you're withdrawing that one, so, but Elaine, you weren't here for that.
So
He's withdrawing the request for funds for 346 to 350 Maple Street.
Okay, is that
'cause-
the one you don't have ownership yet?
Yeah, it's too complicated. And you guys are gonna be making your decisions soon enough that it doesn't, I think to try to complicate an already complicated process is probably not in any of our best interests. It seems like we're better off just focusing on. And then the good news is it cuts the budget in less than half, so. But I do, I mean, I'm happy
Do you
to
have
start talking or
pictures you can show? Oh, you don't,
don't
okay.
want to- There's really, I mean, it's mostly, at this point, it's mostly masonry. The 346, 350 was the one that I was really, I'm very excited about the condos, but we've already done a ton of work on the condos. 346, 350, I think, had a lot more sort of appeal as far as the chance of changing the streetscape a little bit more, but, let me also, I'm sorry.
Is it not on?
I'm sorry.
Then you should probably reintroduce yourself.
Right. Yeah, my name is John Tansey, and I'm the applicant for the Maple Street revitalization. What I do want to say about 346, 350 is it is my intention to go forward with the purchase of that, but that will have to be done without consideration
Purchase
with
of-
regard to 346, 350.
Oh,
I've filed a complaint to go forward to, the owner is in breach of the contract that
Okay.
we have, so, but again, that's a whole other conversation that we
yes.
probably don't need to bother with here.
okay, so do you want to talk a little bit about what you're planning to
Sure,
do with the funding?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think my proposal does explain that Downhome Properties owns 5 of the 6 condo units, and actually the previous presentation spoke a little bit about some of the work that was done in the 80s. The condos were converted from 3 units to 6 units in, I think it was 1986. And it was a early project of One Holyoke, what used to be called Old Holyoke. And the conversion was not a very, it just was not well done, you know, architecturally. It wasn't attractive. The units were not well designed. So when we had an opportunity to buy 2 of the units at a tax title sale, we did that. But then when we at the time that we purchased these units, only 2 of the 6 units were occupied. So the building was primarily vacant. And
When you say we, who's we?
Catherine Gobron, who is a partner in Down Home
The
Property.
down home, yeah, okay.
So, but it was all done with private money, with my private money, the purchase of the tax title units and the renovation of those two units. And when 3 more units came available in the building, it seemed important to get them so that we could have control of the building and make sure that we were able to, have neighbors that were considerate neighbors, and that we had control in the event that they weren't considerate neighbors, that we would be able to control the way the building was operated. So the 3 units that were purchased after the tax title units, those were renovated with what's called RNIP. It's CDBG money, and RNIP stands for the Rental Neighborhood Improvement Program. So we received a $90,000 contract to do the renovation of those 3 units. $20,000 of that contract was a grant, and just under $70,000 was a loan. And it's a low-interest loan, which is really it's been very, very helpful to us. But we did not have enough funding. That the RNIP program limited how much could be spent per unit, and there wasn't enough money to do some of the exterior work that needed to be done, particularly, but the vast majority at this point of what I'm asking for is masonry tuck pointing. And that, as these guys said it, they're talking about $400,000 on that building. It's an expensive process, and the person that we're using is a professional specifically in historic preservation with regard to tuck pointing, so it will be beautifully done. All of it can be seen from either Maple Street or High Street. It's all visible. The other piece that I'm asking for help with is there's a bay window on the front of the building, and if you look to the top of the bay window, you'll see that it's deteriorated and it needs to be painted. There's also some carpentry that needs to be repaired, and I think it's like $1,700 or something around there that
1,200.
$1,200 to do that work. So I don't know what else to tell you other than the building, I think, looks much better than it certainly looked when we purchased it. The one thing that I am suggesting, which is a slight change, is since I've pulled out the request for 346, 350, I've asked to redesign the front walkway, and I'm asking for $1,770 to make it the walkway have more curb appeal, and to put in a brick walkway, something that would have been more appropriate to the period. What's there now is a asphalt walkway.
Do you have documentation that, is there water getting in to the building? Is that what's?
Yeah, as of right now, we don't have the problem that they were talking about. We don't have infiltration of water, but the tuck pointing in some parts of it are very, very seriously deteriorated. So I think it is very important to get this done. So
I think walkway is something that's out of our, that's something that we can't fund, unfortunately, but, we'll talk more about all of that.
John, just to refresh Madam Chairman, refresh my memory. Are these 2 properties, the 352 and 356, these are historic buildings?
right.
They're on, Holyoke Historic Commission said these are historic buildings?
Yeah, you have a letter.
Yes, we have the
It's
letter.
it's actually 3 addresses, 352, 354, 356.
And how many units was that?
It's a total of 6 units.
6 units. Okay.
Down Home owns 5 of
Okay.
the 6.
You said that they were divided into 6. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're still divided into 6?
Yeah.
It's still divided into 6.
So just so everybody,
They're one-bedroom units.
so everybody knows, just as a reminder, originally John was asking, the request was for $39,777.
Right.
Now with this new budget, it's $17,470 for these units he's talking about.
And this is the building that's right across from the library.
Yes.
So it has a really nice presence, and it's in an area that there's a lot of rehab going on. It's, ever since I moved to Holyoke, I always drove down Maple Street, and I used to say, gosh, that's such a cool building. I wish somebody would do something with it. So when this project came forward, and then suddenly I was the one in charge of it, it just seemed like a really good project to take a look at, so.
And some of those other buildings that are along that same row are owned by obviously other people, and are they up, kind of historically accurate, or they've been really?
I think from the street, that whole block of buildings is really quite historically accurate.
I mean, in terms of like changes that people made to the exterior or deterioration that's going on,
Well, I mean,
They basically
yeah.
look the same. There's nothing significant, like,
Uh-huh.
for example, down in the flats with what Mike Moriarty doing, we have stucco as opposed to.
Yeah, yeah.
They're basically look the same. I mean, there's nothing that would jump out at you and say, somebody did a California.
Yeah, I mean, I've
design.
looked at myself, but I was just wondering, because if you got approved to do this, I'm just kind of curious if it would, if, the rest of it would kind of, any work would be done with the rest of it, just to kind of bring it all into.
Yeah,
its best state.
I think what I'm most excited about is what Wayfinders is planning on doing with Library Commons. I think that's going to make a huge change to that neighborhood. The thing that is just staggering is the number that, $250,000 a unit is just incredible to me. And Library Commons, as you may very well know, is quite north of that number. And, I understand that, when you're dealing with, I guess, historic preservation tax credits and low-income credit, whatever all these tax credit programs are, I guess I understand why it gets so expensive. But I don't. If you remember from my narrative, we're doing we did the renovation on the units, the condo units, at just under $50 a square foot. And $50 a square foot in this market is really quite amazing. And they're beautiful. I mean, I can show you, if you want to take a quick peek at my phone, I can show you what the units look like. Let me say, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's get a
Go ahead.
couple of
Go ahead, Mike.
I mean, 80% of this is for pointing. Who's doing the pointing work again?
It's TJ Masonry. He was recommended by my friend Bob McCarroll.
Yeah, and have you gotten any other quotes?
I did not.
What was the name? TJ what?
TJ Masonry.
Masonry?
And so you haven't gotten any other quotes?
I did not get other quotes, in part because I was really wanting to make sure that I got someone who would be respectful of the historic integrity of the building, and he came highly recommended by a guy named Bob McCarroll, who's preservation. Actually, Amy has, I think, spoken to Bob a couple of times. He's on the CPA down in Springfield. He was on the historical commission, and so I called him and said, "Who's a person who's reasonable but does a great job with tuck pointing?" And he said, "This is a guy I would highly recommend." So.
And maybe you have like a resume or something from him that we could have at some
I
point.
can get some. I'm sure I can get something. If you
Yeah,
need
just
that.
something to show the
At
credentials.
least some examples to look at of other work he's done.
Yeah.
I did do that, and his work is beautiful. I mean, Bob showed me some of the work that he's done
Oh, you
for
mean
him.
you submitted that with the application?
I'm sorry?
You said you did do that. Oh, you mean you got to see it?
Yeah, well,
Oh.
I looked at some of his work
Oh,
after
okay.
he gave me a price.
Okay.
I said, I'd like to see some of the work you've done, and
Yeah.
Bob brought me around work that
Mm-hmm.
he's had him do, and then he recommended some other places that I could take a look, and it's beautiful work.
So one of the things you probably heard me ask the other applicant, I'll also ask you, is that, and in particular in your case, this would be, if this goes through, this would be an award of, public money for a privately owned building. So I'm wondering, because I know that when you heard that, this would have to comply with the U.S. Secretary of the Interior standards, that seemed kind of daunting at first, and then you thought that that was possible. But there probably will be something put in place also to protect the city's investment, such as a historic preservation restriction, or some kind of oversight maybe from the local historic commission, if that's what the committee decides to do. So in other words, if you were in the future were to sell this or to, change, the exterior, that you would have to get it approved, either that or that it couldn't be changed based on what the committee decides. So I'm just wondering if that sounds, I know this isn't that specific yet, but it could be for many years. So I'm just wondering your response.
I don't have a problem with a preservation restriction. I would never want to see anything done to that building, at least particularly to the outside of that building, that would cause it to not be appropriate to the period. So
Okay.
I don't see a problem with that.
And then I had asked you about the owner of Unit 354. You said that was owner occupied, and whether, how do you know, would the work that you're proposing also be over the exterior of 354, which you don't own?
Yeah, it would be exterior work. The bay, the third floor of the bay includes Carmen's unit.
But then if you don't own that, really, how
Well,
can we ensure that
yeah,
it doesn't get changed?
Well, exterior work the building is in a condo association. These are condominiums, so they're not, the exterior is the responsibility of the condo association.
But wouldn't they have to agree with the work that you're proposing to do?
If it would be helpful to this group for me to get a letter from Carmen agreeing, I'm sure that would be no problem.
But it's also, again, that issue about how will that particular exterior be protected if you don't own it?
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is it is in a condominium, and she owns the condominium. The condo association controls the exterior of the building. That's
Right.
that's how condominiums
I
are
know,
set up.
so then you don't have control over the exterior of that building.
No, sure we do. Maybe you can
Oh,
help me.
because you're part of the condo association? Is that what you're saying?
If the committee wants to put a restriction on the deed for each condominium, we have 5 of those 6 condominiums. So I would say that will be a non-issue. As far as Carmen's unit is concerned, I am very certain that Carmen is delighted with the improvements that have been made to the building. So if you said there also has to be a deed restriction on Carmen's unit, I'm sure that could happen, but I don't really know how the deed restrictions are recorded. Again,
Registry of
that's
Deeds.
all new to me. So it's registered with each deed.
No, I just
So-
said it's with the Registry of Deeds, but it is a complicated process. I've been reading about it today.
Well, but because it's condos, again, I'm not going to suggest that I have any idea how it gets registered, but I would say that there's certainly not a problem with 5 of the 6 deeds. And as far as the 6th deed, what I'm saying is I'm sure Carmen is delighted to see the improvements that are happening to that
I just don't
building.
know how it works, because like we were saying with 346, you withdrew that because it seemed like we can't, the committee can't award money to a property you don't own, and it seems like this is the same situation.
No, we
You don't-
own the units. We own condominiums.
You're not 354, Unit 354.
Well, we don't own 354, that's true.
So that seems like that could be something we need to think about. I don't know about how that works, to award money for work to be done to someone who doesn't actually own the unit.
Well, but the amount of, I hadn't thought of this as a potential,
You have to
As
be
a
that, you have to
potential
own the
glitch.
unit, To
So
do-
we're talking about the bay window?
yeah, it's a 3-story bay.
Yeah.
And we own the first floor and the second floor. And then the third floor is, yeah, it's Carmen's unit. But I guess what I'm saying, though, is that the exterior of the building is controlled by the condo association, so. If you
Yeah, it
want,
might
if
be
you want
better
her
if
to
she
be,
were.
I could probably
Yeah,
make.
and if she were
yeah,
part
I
of the
could probably-
contract.
Yeah, I could
yeah.
probably make that happen if you wanted me to do that. Yeah, I think Carmen would be fine, but I obviously can't speak for her. But she's been a wonderful neighbor. She's a terrific owner.
What's her
so,
last name?
I don't know.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, would you be able to get a couple of different quotes besides the TJ Masonry? Would you be able to supply 2 other quotes?
Sure.
I think I'd be uncomfortable just going with a lump number with no competing bid, just, to see what else is out there.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with getting some other quotes. As I said, I was more concerned about the quality of the work than the price of the work, and
I understand that,
you
but
know,
pointing-
especially-
Pointing is not difficult.
to make it look good on a historic building, it could be quite difficult, because you want it to match what's already there. I mean, if you go around and look at some of the pointing that people do on these buildings, that it's just, you go, oh my
totally
God,
agree
this is
because
awful.
I
So-
totally agree because they try to do it themselves, but as far as matching it, that's just a pigment that goes into the cement.
Yeah,
So
okay. No, I'm happy to,
pointing is point, it's not like we see a lot of brickwork in what we do, and there's a lot of very, very, very fancy brickwork done. But once the brickwork is done, the pointing and the maintaining, it's not a big issue.
Did you say that you're part of the condo association? Okay.
yes. We manage the condo association.
Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else have any more other questions of John? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thanks.
The only thing I wanted to add is that, and maybe that's all clear in my application, is that we're getting very, very good tenants in the building, and my hope is that down the road, these units will be able to be sold to, first-time home buyers or whatever. So that isn't something that we can do right now because the tax title required us to keep them for 3 years. And I also feel that it's not the right time yet because of the improvements that are going to be made to Wayfinders, to Library Commons. I am more interested in waiting to see how the area, so. But, all right, thank you so much.
All right, John, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Righty.
It was fine.
Bye-bye.
Great to finally
Nice
meet
to
you.
finally meet you.
Oh, you had never met? Oh, I thought you had met.
We've talked on the phone a bunch of times, but I always manage to get Rosemary when she's walking the dog or.
It's when I have my most time.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, John.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to send you guys, I got this from Coalition, and it's from the Department of Housing and Community Development. So it's not from the Coalition, but it's how the utilization of CPA funds for preservation of existing public housing units. And it's very clear. It tells you exactly
Okay.
what you can use the funding for. It says, preservation activities appropriate for CPA funds. Rehabilitation activities not allowed with CPA
I
funds.
think I sent you that.
You sent me that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I printed that out.
but I don't think that did you send it to everybody?
I believe so, because I knew it was very
You
important.
should print that out and have it with you.
I did
Yeah,
send
I
it to
have one of
everybody.
those.
And,
You got
oh,
another
okay,
copy?
so I don't have
By
to do
chance?
that, but yeah.
Do you have a copy of it, Elaine? Do you have an additional copy?
You can have this one because I'll print it out again.
And did
Thank
it
you.
say anything that was pertinent to the projects we talked about tonight?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, and this is something I've shared
It
with
talks
you.
about the walkways, you can't
Oh,
do
the
the walkways, yeah,
Okay.
stuff like that, but
Yeah, we
I
talked
found
about-
that very helpful.
Well, when they say walkways, do you mean like sidewalks? You can't do sidewalks.
Walkways is walkway
Oh,
into the
well-
building.
Well, he had a walkway listed.
Just told him,
Can I
I
see
just
that for a
told
second?
him that he can't
this,
do
right?
the walkway.
The one that you're talking, where it says walkways?
And he has, so today I actually talked to him about the walkway, because I guess it's asphalt.
Oh, yeah, it does say walkways.
And he said, he would like to upgrade it to what it used to be, which was a brick walk-in, which would have, which I thought might have been historic, because that's what it was originally.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I thought it might be, but I don't know.
So I said, well, you should at least submit it, because,
Yeah.
to take the asphalt out would be great, because to have a more, something that looked a little more historic, and if brick was there originally, and then he thought he'd put some plantings in to make it be more curb appeal, so,
Yeah.
so I told him to put it in, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if it
That's
was
something you
not-
can't, you can't do that, but,
Okay.
I mean, we'd love to, I mean,
Yeah, I think
it would
it's
be great.
important, yeah.
I mean, the
But-
other thing is,
Yeah.
he's sort of saying that he's found somebody who's knowledgeable about historic issues, but we still need to figure out, the oversight of that. We can't just go on faith that, because somebody says, oh, I have this good person, that they're
Yeah,
going
So,
to.
Right.
so Mike addressed that, and so he will bring us so I'll encourage him to get one or two more quotes,
Yes,
competitive quotes, yep, okay.
and make.
But why
Carmen-
don't-
And make Carmen a co-applicant.
And, yeah, I put that down also. Okay.
But what I'm talking about is different from that. Yes, that's true, but I'm talking about, him meeting the requirements of the Secretary of the Interior standards, for historic rehabilitation. That's something I brought up before, that we need to figure out who's going to oversee that. Whether it's he has to hire somebody to oversee it that, the committee approves, or it's you request that the Holyoke Historic Commission will oversee it, so.
Amy, that's an interesting point. Are you saying that either this committee or the state of Massachusetts requires that if this person or any person does an historic preservation and gets the money and does the work, they have to have somebody who's knowledgeable on these matters can say, yes, that's done according to the standards of the Department of the Interior, and writes out,
I'm
and
saying
sends a
that the
letter.
committee has to determine how it's going to oversee that. So there are different ways.
Well, my question is it incumbent upon us to have a signed letter by a historical person saying, yes, that 19th century work is incongruent with what's been done? Do we need that in our
Oh,
files?
you mean for the initial work that they're
No,
planning
for
to
the
do?
completed
Or as
work.
it goes on?
For the complete, like, what if we get audited and the state of Massachusetts says, well, how do you know it's done right?
Are you talking about when the work's done?
I am.
And we're done with it?
I'm saying that
Are we gonna
as-
oversee it
As
after
he's
that?
making these changes and doing this work, if this
Yes.
money is awarded, someone has to oversee that it really is in keeping with the standards. We can't just, expect, oh yeah, just do it because we trust you,
That's my
There has
question.
to be something.
That's
Well,
my
I
question.
know, and
So-
I've given you an answer.
Well, I don't see it
I
as
don't
an
know how else
answer.
to answer it.
So, Amy, so it could be just the Historic Commission
Yes.
going and
It could,
and
A is,
overseeing it.
requesting that they do this, which is a lot of work because we have many historic projects. B could be that they, part of the budget that they ask for would include somebody that the committee thinks, that's why I was asking about credentials, that they think is somebody trusted who, who has experience with historic rehabilitation,
Oh, you mean like
So-
the
who's
masonry-
vetted in some way.
masonry company that's gonna do the
Right.
job, maybe they have to have
There
some kind
might
of
have to be a
accreditation
consultant. Well, or there might have to be another person, a consultant, to make sure that it really is done according to the standards.
So I think it might be good to call other CPAs and see how they address this?
Well, this is what I've learned from other CPAs.
Okay.
That's what I'm telling
And
you.
do they have people that they want in the budget to?
Well, sometimes if they have enough of an admin budget, they might be able to use their own admin.
I see.
That could be one, or in our case, we don't seem to.
Can't do it
Or
this year. We
I
could
think
in
the
the future.
easiest way is that the project itself would have to hire somebody who is professional in that area of historic rehabilitation, and we look at their credentials, and, but
They
even,
would sign off on it and say, yes, this is approved. That's what,
well, that
basically,
they
that's
would be the
answer.
person who would be checking in with every change that's done with the CPA money.
You're gonna have needed a lot of money. It's
So
gonna be a lot of money.
there's a lot of complicated aspects to this. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about, having somebody check on the work, but this isn't the Victory Theater here. This is 90% of this work is just pointing. Pointing is pointing. It's the same pointing is done today. You use a little different material, a little better material, okay? But it's just a matter of matching color and doing the pointing work. It's not like this was a Victory Theater thing where we're looking for murals to be done with and stuff like that. I think we'd be going over a little overboard.
Yeah, Mike, and I agree, but I'm just posing the question on any historical, whether it's the Victory Theater or
Right,
this
that's
fellow's
my
property.
point.
Anybody that we, as a committee, will say, we have Mike Sullivan, the historical guy from Worcester, said, yes, this is historically correct. Therefore, it meets all the entire interior or the Massachusetts Historical, Holyoke Historical, that we get a letter to say, yes, this is done correctly. We don't have to have a clerk of the works, but we just have to say that building's done.
And this fiscal year, we can't afford to do it through our own administration
Oh,
budget.
no, why should
So
we?
it's gonna have to be the
I
applicants.
think if I remember correctly, in the letters that the Historic Commission, the Holyoke Historic Commission wrote, they said that they still would want to see what the plan was before it was done. So that would be the initial thing. But I think, yeah, the easiest way would, that's what I was asking, can we see the credentials of the person that you want to do this? And yeah, I agree, it's not as big as the Victory Theater, but still, I see your point, is what I'm saying is that it would be good to be sort of uniform with this so that, when we approach historic projects, there is sort of a system in place for how to deal with it.
Yeah, well,
So-
this year, we may not be able to do that, but the next fiscal year, if we have the admin budget, we can hire
Yeah, but
someone
it
who
can,
can.
but it's not, doesn't have to be out of the admin budget, as I said.
But if you want someone who's gonna be the same person overseeing
No, I'm
all
not
of them.
necessarily saying that. I'm
That's
just saying the
what-
same system. So in other words, it might be decided that, okay, for this year, it's going to be, or future years, it will be a person that we vet. We at least ask for a resume and we look up the work they've done before to see that they are knowledgeable about historic rehabilitation, a consultant, and that's part of the money that they're awarded, which
Okay.
will pay that
All
person.
right, so you don't want one person to oversee, because that's what I understood.
That's not what I meant necessarily.
But you're just saying, so for instance, on this particular budget, if you had 3 quotes that came in, and we looked at who sent them in and what their proposal was, that would be good enough because they have background and a resume to,
I'm not sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to go back and look at my notes again. I mean, it might be the person doing the work is separate from the person who oversees it. I don't think it can be the same person, because then you'll have someone, might cut corners, or, I don't know. So it needs to be
yeah.
an outside person, I would think.
I've been through a few CPA meetings. Not that I did anything historical, but I sat in because I was a presenter on open space. And I don't ever remember any CPAs asking for that. I think that they just respected the proposals that were sent in and the documentation as to who was doing the work, and then they awarded the money accordingly. So I'm not sure. I think.
Well, just keep in mind that there's a lot of communities that don't follow the legislation
right.
properly. So that's one thing Stuart Saginaw has warned me about, because I've said, wait, so-and-so said this. And he said, oh, well, this is the pitfall if you just go, because there's, different ways that people do things.
That
So,
makes sense.
I've promised twice now to get Chris Skelly in
Oh, I got an
These
email
are, these
from
are the
him.
questions, these are the questions.
Yeah, that would be good.
These are the questions he could,
Yeah.
we could sit here and debate on. He'd tell us, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's what you do. And that's a state historic preservation officer, so that, to me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that
it would be
clear
good
us
to
up.
have him.
So
yeah.
I
Where
will,
is he?
I will call him tomorrow morning and see if I can get him in here for
We
our
have a
next.
lot of meetings
for-
coming up where he has a choice of picking one that he
pick-
could be here.
Right,
at,
and
So,
whichever one it is that we get him in for,
yeah.
we should make him first on the agenda and.
Yeah, I
We
think
have,
that,
we have a
questions ready
meeting
for him.
Friday, we have a meeting next Wednesday, and then it's the 2 public hearings. He could even come to those, the 13th and 15th.
yeah,
And then after that, do we have meetings after that?
I think we do. Yeah, we have everything scheduled for
this-
the end of the month.
Friday might be too quick for him. I'll give him a call tomorrow morning, or maybe even tonight, not tomorrow morning. And I'll
Wednesday.
see if I can get him in here for Wednesday.
But, okay, if he came on Wednesday, maybe we could start the meeting at 6. Since, I think we had it down for 6:45, and we could do
Right.
just what we did today, and maybe
Right.
he could talk to us at the beginning.
That doesn't violate any open meeting rules, right?
5 of
As
us
long as
here.
you have your quorum.
Yep.
I mean,
Okay.
No,
oh,
we-
I
no,
see what
we-
you're saying. I
No,
didn't think
no,
of
no,
that.
The meeting was advertised for 6:45, though.
we didn't advertise that meeting. We didn't post that meeting yet, next Wednesday's meeting. We
But
posted
it's-
Friday.
this meeting was advertised for 6:45, I think. I mean, or,
Look, come on, we're going to be here all night.
Let's not worry
Let's
about that.
wrap it up.
Next week, the meeting
a
hasn't
good
been
point.
posted yet, so we could post it for 6 o'clock.
okay.
Okay.
All right, that's a good
How about-
idea.
Now, our next meeting is this Friday.
This Friday, yes, it's.
What's the date of this, what's the date?
What's today? The third.
February 1st.
February 1st. and
Friday
it's
is
at
February
6
1st.
o'clock.
February 1st, here at 6
6
o'clock.
o'clock.
Okay.
yes. And we have some more applicants coming in.
I have been telling the applicants that there's going to be a projector, laptop, and screen setup, and yet, and maybe that was okay for today, but I really hope that Ryan will be
Life will go
present to
on.
help with those people, because they might want to share. Right, so, we went to a lot of, what's the matter?
Let's wrap. How
Well-
much minutia of detail do we need? We survive.
Okay, can I make my point, though, is that I contacted, and Ryan did too, Barbara, and she brought in, she actually, sorry, I didn't say that well, she brought the projector and all this stuff. So I think if we took that measure, we should make it available to people, because we've told them that it would be.
Okay, you set it up for Wednesday, for Friday, if you need it.
I set it up?
Yeah.
No,
Anybody else set it up?
Ryan, I don't know how to set it up. You don't? Oh, okay. Well, I did have more things to
We're not
share.
gonna hurry just because you're in
There's
a
a lot of
hurry.
work involved.
Well, then,
We are
we are
accomplishing something.
Please.
No, we're
just-
not.
No, we're not. Maybe to you, you are, but we're fine. Oh, I am. Okay.
Okay.
So anyways, they're coming in Friday. Is it posted? Yes. Yes, okay, we're all set for Friday, 6 o'clock. And did you do any minutes tonight before I came?
We did.
You did, you approved minutes? So we're all caught up until what?
I think we
This
need the
tonight?
minutes for last meeting, right, Ryan? Yeah.
Okay, so that would be last Friday's, right?
It's the 23rd.
So you did Wednesday?
23rd,
Yeah, okay. All right,
Okay, I did have some things I really wanted to share. It won't take too long.
okay.
Okay. And I shared this with you through email, and it's the preservation restrictions on historic resources, because this was, they've updated the website for the CPA Coalition, and they have more articles that explain these complicated issues. So I wanted everybody to understand that a perpetual restriction, a permanent restriction on historic resources is absolutely required whenever a resource is purchased with CPA funds. So it doesn't have to be purchased by the city, but by anybody. So if any money goes, so we don't have that situation in any of our applications. We have the open space one, which will be a permanent one. Okay, but in the event CPA legislation doesn't explain what to do with all these other ones. This is what I brought up with each of the applicants. So there are different ways that communities handle this, okay? So it's not, that legislation isn't specific about what to do in other cases, but most CPA communities place some kind of restriction adapted from MHC, Chris Kelly, to protect the city's investment. And the Cape Cod has an example. in the article I sent you, the link, where they adapted the permanent one, the perpetual or preservation restriction, to make it less onerous, and they use that to protect the city's investment. So for Maple Street, for that Chestnut Street building, all these things.
So you just need one, you don't have to do one.
Well, it's very complicated, but that's one way. Another way of doing this, Newton, for example, what they did is they signed a memorandum of understanding with the CPC. I don't know when they say Newton signed it. I guess the city of Newton signed it with the committee, requiring their local historic commission to review and approve any changes that are made. So that's sort of similar to what I was talking about before with, meeting those standards. So not only, maybe the Historic Commission could not only make sure that these applicants meet the standards, but they could also ensure that whenever a change is made after, we've invested this money, say to that Maple Street building, for example, that they would have to come to the Holyoke Historic Commission and get it approved so that it would not just be torn out after the money is put in there. Or if it was sold, it wouldn't be destroyed by the next owner.
Right.
Within a set period of time. So that's another example of what you could do. Other CPA communities decide by the amount of money you're awarding. So there's a threshold amount. So if it's a large amount of money above a certain amount, then the preservation restriction, there's a preservation restriction required. Like I was talking about the Cape Cod example. And if it's less money, a small amount of money, it would be a shorter term restriction. So that's another kind of thing that people do. But I just want you to understand that even if we did this preservation restriction, like I said, adapted like the Cape Cod did, so it's not as difficult as the MHC one, it's still complicated because you need a consultant to assess the property, a lawyer for the applicant, usually the applicant could have the lawyer, would draft this based on the Cape Cod model. And, when I say assess the property, they have to detail what the architectural features are, because how are you going to know if they were altered with the money that you put into it if you don't have any documentation? So somebody has to document. And then the cost could be added to their budget. And then MHC has to approve it. And this is another reason why it would be good to have Chris Skelly here. And it must be held by an outside party. So I did not realize that how complicated it is to do this, even though this isn't the perpetual restriction, but it still requires a lot of work, with the city solicitor and with lawyers and all kinds of things. So I hope people will read over that link that I sent, because this is something else that has to be determined, and it would be good to have something that, a system, like I said, that is going to be put in place.
So in other words, this is when you're concerned, and not you personally, but I mean, this is the concern of I don't know if it's the legislation or the coalition, whatever, that once they do the work, we give them the money, and we're done with them, that nothing happens to that
It's not the concern.
afterwards.
It's not the concern of the legislation. Like I said, there's nothing specific in there that tells you what to do when you're giving money to something that's not being acquired with the money, that's not being bought with the money. So you could just say, you could do nothing. However, why would you do that? Because you are investing, city money, you're making an investment. So you want to make sure it doesn't get destroyed or sold or whatever.
Right, but I mean, I think I like that idea of different amounts of money. If we don't invest a whole lot of money.
Right.
I don't want to be, tied up with them for, it's like, if we give somebody a lot of money, then, yes, we want to oversee it and make sure it stays there for good, and historical commission can oversee it, whatever, and make sure that nothing happens to the investment.
I think that we're making small investments in a lot of these, and there are other factors involved, and they are being overseen by other, like the one that came before us and wanted
BOC.
$50,000 and $50,000.
The BOC.
It's a $9 million project they're putting together. There's other people who are invested in making sure what their project is and the grants they're getting are already capturing all the things that we're looking for to
Well, in
cover.
their
We're
case,
only
that would be
investing
interesting to know.
similar.
Yeah, maybe they already have a preservation
course.
restriction
I think, yeah.
to get what they're getting, and we could ask about
Yes,
that, you know?
yes.
So,
But probably not for the more modern building. Well, okay, that's different, that's not historic, forget I said that.
so I guess you can compare it to when you do an open space project. So somebody holds the fee, and then there's another person who, under the
Yeah.
CPA, has to own the conservation restriction. So the protection is there. So I think that when we vet a project that comes before us and we ask them, is it recognized by the Historic Commission? Those are the questions that we're asking for a small project like Maple Street, which is $17,000, well, probably even less than that, because we can't do the
Walkway.
sidewalk. That he's gotten approval that is a historic building. Do we really need to go so far as to oversee the whole project when he's already got approval?
No, but that's a different issue.
Yeah.
I'm talking
No, she's
about,
talking about whatever they do, though.
Right.
They do that someone else doesn't come in there and
Later
right,
on.
I'm
that
talking
all
about
out after,
protecting the city's investment,
But-
you know?
over time.
Right,
Exactly.
But our investment is only that we're just addressing what they're asking for at the time.
Yeah, well, that's what we can get. We can get an
Those
opinion.
communities want to protect the investment. They don't want it to put public money that's coming from this real estate surcharge into a project that could then just be, you know, sold and then altered the next year. And that would be very distressing for the
Right.
public to see, wait a minute,
No, I
how
get
come my
that.
money is going towards something that's not being protected? So,
Yeah,
No, I understand that
Yeah.
whole thing. I just think that there's a lot of information that we don't know about a lot of these projects. You know, as they bring them forth, I think they're complicated. I know you have to leave, Marco. Oh, go ahead, Marco.
I did want to say that in the local historic district, whenever work needs to be done, the local historic commission receives an application, reviews the scope of work, approves it, tells the building department, we approve work being done. The building department then reviews the project and may or may not grant the permit. I can check with the Holyoke Historic Commission to see if somebody's got to do work on a project. I would think that they would have to get approval on the scope of work from the Holyoke Historic Commission. I know that's what we do in the local.
Right.
right, but once they do,
Right,
they
but
do
every
and
time you
the
do
project-
work,
Well,
excuse me.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So then the next time when they want to do work on it, they would have to go to the.
They have to go before
Yeah,
another
Historic
whole.
Commission.
But I'm not sure if,
They have
Yeah.
to go back to the historic.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Or times, yeah.
And it's their oversight to make sure that the proposed work for that, because all this work, I'm pretty certain, requires a building permit. I'm not sure if repointing does. But I know that in our case, the building department is not supposed to allow or provide a building permit unless in the local historic district, that commission approves it first. So if this other property is listed as a historic property under the purview of the Holyoke Historic Commission, I would imagine they'd have to review the project, then send some kind of notification to the building department saying, we approve that work.
What we could do is send what the work was done describe the project, what work was done for each project that we do that, and send a copy to the Historical Commission and send a copy to the building commissioners so they can look it up and see, oh, okay, in 2019, they did this work, and, so
it's
we
at
want to
least
make
it's
sure.
documented.
Yeah, at least they know what to look for.
I think it would be a really good idea to have the Holyoke Historic Commission represented at one of our meetings, so we
Yeah,
can hash out some of
absolutely.
these
It's you,
things.
isn't it?
Yeah, I'm the representative here, and I have, for instance, for the Community Flats building, I have some information now because I've contacted them, and I could bring this question to their attention and see how that process works. I know how it works for the local historic
Right.
commission. I can ask how it works for the more general Holyoke Historic Commission.
Marco, by definition, any of these
No,
I
no,
want
no.
that one back.
There's one local historic district in Holyoke. That's the Fairfield Avenue Local Historic District.
Right.
And
It's,
that's registered under the Massachusetts, right?
well, I know that it's a part of the Holyoke Historical Commission.
Okay.
So I don't always attend their meetings, but I know that within my purview of the, because I'm chair of the Local Historic Commission,
Okay, so the local historic commission that you're chair of is separate from the Holyoke Historic?
Correct.
Yes.
it's separate, but it's under the auspices of the Holyoke Historic Commission.
Okay.
They don't.
That's true in every town. That's, so you have to go through a whole process in order to become a historic district. But the Historic Commission is much more general. They basically say this is a historic building or we recognize it, but they're not mandated to do anything specifically to that historic venue.
Does the local historic commission oversee these historic districts? Is that primarily their responsibility?
I don't-
Well, in Holyoke, there's only one historic
The one-
district,
is
so,
that their primary?
work done within that district goes to the local historic commission, who reviews the project and decides whether or not the scope of work is approved. There's an ordinance that describes what people can do and not do in that district, and basically, we're there to protect the exterior appearance of the houses on Fairfield Avenue. I wrote myself a note to check with Debbie Opperman, who's their, I guess, city official who works with the Holyoke Historical Commission, and I can see whether or not they review work that's being done on historic properties. I can only imagine that the building department wouldn't look at the historical accuracy of, windows that are being installed, or it probably comes from the Holyoke Historical Commission. So let me check with Debbie and see how they do work on historical properties. And frankly, if there is something in place, then when somebody like the Valley Opportunity wants to do work, and so they go to pull a permit on a historical property, they probably have to get permission from the Historical Commission first, who will review the type of work that they're doing, make recommendations, give approval, and then, with their approval, they go seek a permit at the building department. Now, how they follow up after the work is done, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's
That's a question that we have at the local historic district as well, because we only have limited resources.
If they don't have documentation of what has been done historically from us, what work that we have funded, then they won't know. So that's why we need to keep them in the loop.
Yep, so let me bring this to Debbie's attention and to Richard Almstrom, who's chair of that district, of that commission, and let me see how maybe we can work together, and this will be the first, this is our first round, so maybe it's not clear that maybe we needed to coordinate with them on the historical work that's being proposed.
I do.
Can I just,
I'd like to talk to you another time, not now, more
Sure.
just to understand this, because it almost sounds like we could have gotten the letters from the local historic commission then.
yeah, it says that we can get a letter from them.
So I thought it had to be from the Holyoke Historic Commission.
The local only does work on Fairfield Avenue.
Yeah, no.
Because right now,
no,
that's the
yeah.
only
Okay.
local
That is
historic
local
district. There can be multiple historic
They're
districts.
talking about,
Yeah.
Okay, so this would be another one for Chris Scully. I think you're wrong on that. All right? Even though it's called the Fairfield Ave, once you establish a local historic district commission, it is in fact in charge of all local historic districts.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But there's only one in Holyoke now, so
And that's D1. There is
So-
only one anywhere.
That's right.
Even though they have different historic districts.
No, but there's only one street.
that's right. So Fairfield Avenue is the only district that is
That's
a
right.
local historic district. They wanted to do it with Mater Dolorosa, for instance. That would have been a second local historic district. That would have been a single building local historic district.
I think the train station is also a historic district.
It's not under that jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's
It's totally different.
I think it is, and they don't know it. We'll have Chris.
It has to
we'll
go-
Have Chris answer these
Yeah,
questions. And we
yeah.
gotta get.
Yeah, I
we
think
got-
that's a good-
to
I
Mike's
think
point,
that's a good point.
We gotta get rolling.
the stained glass windows, did they explain why what are they gonna do if they don't get the funding, from MHC? Did they say that when they were here? Did they talk about that? Because part of their,
They did
they
s-
want 75,000, right? But they said, we also want to do two or three windows, and they cannot
Well, they
only-
had said earlier in their responses that they would scale back the number of windows that they
Oh,
could do.
if they don't get the, okay, all right. Well, then they should be asking for more money, I think, if that's the
I
case. But
remember.
we'll see. I mean, one window at a time is not gonna.
Well, no,
fly,
they're
right?
asking to do 3 windows.
But that's including funding from MHC. If they don't get that funding,
Uh-huh.
They should have
We'll
just.
cross that bridge when we come to it.
yeah. Okay, I just wanted to, I wonder what they said. Okay. Any
Does
other
anyone
questions?
remember? I don't know,
Oh,
my brain's
it's all right.
not
Okay.
fried.
We're-
Any other
we're good.
questions for tonight?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Oh, God,
Come on.
please.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let's go. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.